I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for Investmentpitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Johannes Schweifer, the CEO of CoreLedger. Johannes, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really excited to dive into CoreLedger and all the things that you're working on in the blockchain space. And it would be great to kick off our interview by hearing a little bit about your background in blockchain and how that led up to you being the CEO of CoreLedger.
Well, I started actually my career as a chemist, and I founded, or rather co-founded, one of the now most successful over-the-counter brokers here in Switzerland, Bitcoin Suisse, in 2013. So my first touch points with cryptocurrencies were actually mostly about speculation. And well, I like technology. So that was the reason why I looked for something else, something which gives more, let's say, purpose to the whole technology. And that's the reason why we founded CoreLedger. And at CoreLedger, we use the technology to implement real business cases beyond speculation. Of course, everything which you can do with that technology ultimately could also lead to speculation, but that's not the primary focus.
That's a great, interesting transition from chemistry and quantum computing into blockchain. And I think that a lot of people at first get interested based off the speculation, but then once they see the fundamental values of blockchain and integrating into businesses and different industries, they stick around. And I think that's what your team is doing with CoreLedger. Now, could you just elaborate on what are the main goals of CoreLedger right now? How are you helping businesses leverage blockchain technology?
The most important thing what we are doing is we provide the infrastructure which is necessary in order to use tokens and integrate them into business processes. What does that mean? So mostly you need to document things. There is no way around just having some anonymous or unknown objects floating around wherever. So be it in blockchain or be it somewhere else. So documentation is one of the key topics and key issues. We'll solve that. The second one is the tokenization itself, like giving a quantity to some virtual or digital object. And that is more than just creating a smart contract. So it's hard to explain it in detail, and that's the reason why I just skip over that. Then people are familiar with the constraints and restrictions governments implement, and they implement more and more of them as the day goes by. So having some forms of governance and rules implemented directly into some digital objects or into the token itself is important. And the last thing is conversion. So we call them the token economy essentials. And this is what we are providing to businesses, ready to use, really for getting started right away. So what businesses actually can avoid by using our product is to build everything from scratch, which is, as we know, a very costly endeavor.
Definitely, yeah. A lot of businesses that try to integrate blockchain, I've read into the studies, and 90% of them or more fail either with the implementation or in their first year of business. And obviously, there's some room for improvement there. And I guess CoreLedger's package is trying to lower those numbers. So that's really interesting. Did you study, the failure points of blockchain integration into startups and sort of pinpoint how you can get these businesses to have successful blockchain integrations?
Well, not everything in detail, because during the rush, or let's say the gold rush of the ICOs, we have seen the good and the bad sides of getting a lot of funding into a new era or a new area of business or a new area of technology. The one thing was that also kind of meaningless or totally foolish projects were funded. But on the other hand, it was possible to try out a lot of different things. So to elaborate the reasons why projects failed, well, some of them really didn't have any real business case behind them. Others simply failed because they ran out of funding when the ICO bubble burst at the end. So a lot of different reasons. And those which ran out of money could mostly be traced back to the fact that they tried to build everything themselves. It's like a pizza delivery service who tries to build his own car for providing his service. So in that sense, yeah, a lot can be attributed to the fact that they tried to do everything themselves.
Yeah, I could definitely see a lot of startups taking that route, without a lot of capital to try and get off the ground, just building whatever they can to try and utilize blockchain to get through that. And you mentioned in your 4 pillars that the tokenomics and having a proper structure so that when you do release a product, it actually has that ability to scale and to get community and things like that. Now, with the startups and bigger companies that you're working with at CoreLedger, because they're not doing it themselves fully, how much do they still need to understand about blockchain integrations, integrating into their business, and how much hand-holding are you doing for these companies?
Still a lot. I mean, we take a lot of the technical hassle away, the how to do it, the really code-based development part, but still they need to understand the individual parts which are combined. It's like a big toolbox which you can use in order to build business processes, but it's not, let's say, a simple click together form of toolbox. So we are still years away from that, that you can just from a user interface click together business processes. But we assist with the very basic steps, those which are the most costly at the moment, because business processes are kind of individual. So there's still some wiring to be done. But all that part below, let's call it the fundamental parts of a project. These we provide out of the box.
And there's so many startups that are looking to utilize blockchain to create something new, but there's also a lot of enterprise corporations and conglomerates that are also looking to take advantage of this technology. Are you working with companies of all different sizes, and have you also focused on the enterprise sector, and how is that going?
We focus on companies of all sizes. There is no restriction whether there's a size limit, a lower bound or upper bound to where CoreLedger's tools make sense. But it's mostly the small and medium companies for whom we are the most interesting, because it's just lowering the entry barrier for those companies to work with blockchain. It's still an absolutely novel field of technology. So it's young. It's 12 years old, basically, and we're talking about the start of the Bitcoin blockchain. If we talk about the start of programmable blockchains, it's 6 years, 5 actually. So absolutely, let's say, grassroots movement there. But small and medium companies, they will not have a chance to participate in such a grassroots movement. And so they have a disadvantage compared to enterprises. Enterprises can always just hire blockchain developers and try out stuff themselves.
Definitely. And there's so many different use cases for the companies that you're working with. I'm sure they're working throughout all different industries as well. But more recently, there's been a focus on blockchain-based solutions for the pandemic. And there's been contact tracing, potentially voting. Supply chain management has been a huge blockchain integration for masks and PPE and just for the whole supply chain in general. Have you been working with any companies that have been looking at bringing solutions to solve the crisis that we're currently in?
Sure. So it's about tracing the origin of goods. So there we have started a project. Then also in the recycling of scrap metal, which is, let's say, partly affected by COVID, and where we can bring an improvement. And a lot has been going around contact tracing. So there we also launched a project which is about using blockchain to maintain the anonymity of participants. So instead of really sharing data, you could use blockchain just to exchange cryptographic keys and not revealing any privacy.
That's great. And one thing I was thinking about when these new startups, smaller, medium-sized businesses are integrating blockchain, they may be limited by the tools that blockchain has available. Ethereum is using specific programming languages, and it's not always interoperable with other blockchain technologies. widely available are, for the tools that you provide, how do they work with if the company needs to pivot based on a business decision, or if they want to use a blockchain that may not be interoperable with another blockchain? Does your company focus on interoperability and compatibility with other business solutions, and more looking at a forward-looking as a business maximalist rather than a blockchain maximalist?
Well, we created CoreLedger and Theos on the assumption that there will be a lot of different blockchains for different purposes. So the topic of scalability is a important one. I mean, Ethereum has hit now, okay, they have not really hit the wall, but are about to hit the wall. So when we started, of course, with Ethereum technology, but always had an eye on other developing technologies. So we built it in such a way that it's kind of blockchain agnostic. Nothing is truly blockchain agnostic. So it's like an operating system, and you can't expect an operating system to run without any adaptation on different platforms. But the amount which needs to be changed and adapted to a different blockchain is very small. So we guess it's around 3 to 5%. But we are, of course, actively looking for interoperability. So the two blockchains we are supporting at the moment are Ethereum based, and we are working towards interoperability between those two. But we are not developing that ourselves. So we take existing protocols.
Oh, great. And yeah, you're right. It's more of future proofing, as blockchains will need to become more interoperable when more businesses are using it. But right now, the majority of applications in DeFi applications are all running on Ethereum. And I'm curious on how CoreLedger has been working, if at all, in the DeFi space. The decentralized finance space blew up in 2020. It's done a tenfold increase in the amount of value that's been locked into these decentralized liquidity pools and exchanges. Do you see that as an opportunity for more startups to utilize CoreLedger to also capitalize on the DeFi movement?
That is a question which has a lot of different aspects. So one thing is DeFi has not really served the purpose of non-financial use cases, or at least not of the smaller individuals or smaller participants, because it caused a huge rise in gas prices. So transactions became extremely costly. For a whale who moves around 100K, no problem. But if you're small speculator, and again, it's the speculative use cases which is fomented by the DeFi technology, then high transaction costs are simply a deterrent. But at least it showed what is possible in theory if the system was scalable. CoreLedger did not directly participate in that movement because it's, first of all, against the idea of CoreLedger to just be a speculative platform. But on the other hand, our protocol supports a different form of decentralized finance. We don't call it like this. We call it a decentralized marketplace. And the technical term which we have chosen is a token warp. It works a little bit like the connection which you can get through Facebook when you say people are connected to everybody on the planet who has, of course, a Facebook account through 6 or 7 hops. And the same principle we applied to conversion of values, conversion of tokens on the blockchain, which is transparent, where people can just trade one thing against another one without needing anybody to directly offer it. That can be compared to DeFi, but we rather try to not do it. So.
Yeah, I think that's a smart play, and I like where you're heading with having those decentralized swaps and removing counterparty risk and having an exchange of value that's safe. And sort of it is very comparable to with the speculation in DeFi right now to sort of the ICO craze, where people are really just they're just speculating. And I believe that there is a lot of value coming out of the DeFi space in terms of being able to have interest-bearing accounts and loans without counterparty risk. But I think that sort of needs to be there needs to be a little bit of a retracement and then a finding of the fundamental values of DeFi, because it has, whenever something goes up that quickly, you always need to have some kind of little correction. And so I think that it sounds like your company's staying in the right headspace in the DeFi movement. And we're running a little short on time, Johannes, but I want to talk about the future of CoreLedger. What does your company have finishing off this year, moving into 2021? What are the main goals and focuses for your company as you continue to grow?
Well, we started a lot of different projects and we are pursuing them all. So one of them is providing the Active Sandbox to companies to try out blockchain. So the Active Sandbox is, as the name suggests, a playground for just trial and error of blockchain use cases. And we also offer them to universities. This is, I'd say, one of the first places to look at where people want to experiment with blockchain technology. Mm-hmm. Then the COVID crisis has actually shown us the need to help people in countries where they have a huge inflation. So we are providing TEOS, that's the token economy operating system, and all the tools for starting barter economies. That's pretty nice, especially with the conversion mechanism, which I have just explained. Mm-hmm. So that allows people to trade, for example, soybeans for cattle, with many conversion steps in between if need be, but in a transparent way. You don't even see them. So you can bypass currencies if need be. So if there is inflation, you might want to trade with real values. Mm-hmm. That's let's say like barter in the old time, but
that's super cool.
Bring it into the future.
Yeah, digitalized barter trading, and that's really interesting. And how can the viewers find out more about CoreLedger or companies that are looking to start utilizing the services that you have, or just to learn more about the sandbox?
Well, just go to our website, www.coreledger.net. So you'll find information about Active Sandbox and all our products there.
Great. Well, I'll leave that link in the description box below as well. Thank you so much for the time, Johannes. All the best with CoreLedger moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for the interview. Have a good day. Goodbye.